So, hello guys. This is going to be your very boring last update of me growing nitrogen fixing corn for the 24 season here. And there, as you can see, is our harvest. It's quite pathetic. But in my defense, and in the defense of this corn, right when the plants, if you go back and check on our updates, right when I planted these in the ground, we were hit by Hurricane Milton. And we ended up being flooded for a few weeks. It was 3 weeks. We were pretty much in standing mud and water out here. And the corn did not like standing water. That, coupled with the fact that they were tasseling and silking right when we were hit by those storms, really just screwed everything up. It did not bode well for our little experiment growing this nitrogen fixing corn. But we did learn something growing this corn this year, and it is probably one of the most important things we needed to know about the corn is whether or not it was day length sensitive. And it is. It's a day length sensitive corn, which means it's going to tassel and silk for us when the days start shortening, which is in the winter. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not the best case scenario for this corn. It would have been better if it was a day length neutral corn. And I was really hoping it was because of the region, this particular yellow dent. It's not even a dent corn. It's a full on, is it a flint corn when it's rounded like that? But either way, I was hoping because this came from northern Mexico that this would be a corn that was more suited to my area and not as day length sensitive, but it didn't work out that way. And all this means is that unless we can keep the plants growing, we plant them earlier in the year and get absolutely massive corn plants. That's a way to do it. Or we could plant them later in the year and utilize that day length sensitivity to have a smaller plant and hopefully just as high of a yield. But the problem with that is the weather and the pest issues. The first half of the year we tend to be drier. The pest pressure is quite a bit lower. The second half of the year is our wet season, and the disease and pest issues, worms, armyworms in particular, is extremely high, and they tend to completely devastate corn. So, yeah, if we were to really baby it or to spray it with Thericide or something with BT crystals in it that naturally kills the armyworms, and it's a pretty much, I think you can find even organic. It's a naturally derived thing. If you don't know what BT is, it's a fungus kind of thing, and you spray it on your plants, and when caterpillars eat it, they stop eating and they die. It destroys their digestive system. That's what they use in GM corn. That's what's been modified in the corn plant. It produces its own BT crystals throughout the plant, and then they eat it and the bugs die. But you can buy it as a spray. We could do that, but then we still have the weather issues. And our wet season pretty much runs from, it starts picking up really heavily June, July, and runs until November. And that would be right when this corn would be planted out, which ideally we would be able to plant this corn super early as possible, possibly even February, and be harvesting it going into May, June. But it doesn't seem to be the case. I have other varieties of this nitrogen fixing corn. I've got a couple black varieties and a couple blue varieties and even a green variety, which corn seed does not last very long, so I will definitely be planting all of it in the 2025 growing season. And I think I'm just going to Hail Mary it and plant it all out right at the beginning of the season and see how they do. And because we got so few cobs and seed off of this yellow type, which is the one that I was really hoping for, because everybody wants yellow corn, feed corn, everything. It's just the standard. People are used to seeing yellow corn. And we'll see how the others do, and I'll probably just cross them all if they silk and tassel at the same time and go from there. But we will see. I will make more videos next year as we're continuing to grow and select out our nitrogen fixing corn. The reason I didn't show me harvesting is there wasn't much. The plants died back after I planted them out, which I will not do again. I'm going to direct sow them right into the ground and just make sure they don't get eaten, hopefully, because it did not like the transplanting and the growing in the seed cells starting it. It just didn't, though that might have been because right when I put it out, it was ready to tassel and silk regardless because of the time of year. But we're going to try putting them right into the ground this coming season. And we got a bit of seed here. Corn does suffer quite a bit from inbreeding, depression. Unlike a lot of plants where you can take seed from just a couple plants or even one plant and they don't really have any issue. Corn does not like to be inbred, which means if I was just to take one or two kernels off this and start a whole giant crop of corn and save seed, corn doesn't like that for some reason. It can really suffer from that, and you'll have decline in the plants and their vigor and whatnot. So I think we're just going to plant all of the varieties we have out at the same time, stick them in a nice good bed, and actually see how they do. As for the nitrogen fixing part on these, they did grow very few, but that's possibly because of the way we grew them in the seed cells and putting them out so late in the season when they were wanting to, again, tassel and silk. They did grow the anchor roots, but I didn't really notice any jelly. The jelly that these are supposed to produce on those anchor roots, which they are then supposed to harbor the nitrogen fixing bacteria in that jelly on their anchor roots. And they just seemed like normal roots to me, like all corn and sorghums produce. I did not see any special jelly or anything forming on them. It might just be because the plants weren't that old and didn't have time to develop it. I'm not sure. And that might be again because of the way we grew them, started them out so late. And I don't really know. And they didn't really form too many. They formed them right at the base. And from what I've gathered during research, the nitrogen corn, as it's growing, they get so tall. Some of these can get 10, 15, 20, 30 feet tall, which is insane. But that's, again, because they have such a long season, that those anchor roots go right up the stalk, up to literally 4, 5, 6 feet. Some people were telling me, and even some pictures that I found, and those roots can get up to a foot or more long, and they have the jelly coating up and down the entire root, which the corn is then absorbing the nitrogen from the fixing bacteria. But maybe we'll be able to see that next season if we plant them out nice and early. And I guess that's what we're going to do. The major issue again is the pests, especially with this corn growing so tall. And once those armyworms get down in the whorl on the corn, they will eat the growing bud, the growing center, completely out, and then the corn is done. It won't grow. Some varieties that grow multiple shoots, suckers, slips, whatever you want to call them on the side, can overcome this. But armyworms are such a devastating pest here in my area that they tend to be 100%. As soon as you've got a shoot coming up, the moths are laying eggs, and the armyworms are 100% destroying that corn. So if you're not spraying it right off the bat as soon as you've got emergence out of the dirt, those armyworms are attacking it. And that might be an issue if that corn's tall. Once it gets over 3, 4, 5 feet, you got to spray down in there in the whorl where they like to lay their eggs. And if you can't reach that, that's going to be a big issue. But we will see. That's why I don't really grow corn. I stick with sorghum. The armyworms will predate sorghum somewhat, but not as bad as corn. They tend to leave the sorghum alone, and also the way sorghum grows with the main head pushing out right on the thing instead of having a separate tassel and cob. It tends to mitigate the armyworm damage. So even if they do get down in the whorl on sorghum and kind of eat away at the head a little bit, it still pushes out. And then you don't have to worry about the armyworms because the wasp and the birds will eat them. But with corn, they go right down in there and they'll destroy the tassel, and they'll get down in there and destroy the new cobs too. So that's the difference why sorghum is a little more resistant, a lot more resistant to the armyworms. And just that the corn tends to be so much more tender, where sorghum's a tougher plant and the armyworms just don't have as easy a time eating on it. But there we go, guys. 12 minutes of me just yakking in my camera, going all over the place for you. But I don't want to give up on this because corn is can be such a productive crop. And if you can remove the need to dump so much nitrogen on it, or you can have the possibility of growing it in such poor soils like we have in my area and a lot of growing areas, that would be amazing. But got to overcome some challenges. There's people working with the day length sensitivity issues, hybridizing these with standard corn varieties and working on them. I'm way late to the game with corn. I've just, you can't work with everything. It's just what it is. But we'll see what we can do with it. If anything, I've got a variety of corn, a couple of varieties that I do like to grow. One is a baby corn. I don't, what's the original name? I forget the original name on it, but it grows multiple stalks. One seed can grow 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 stalks. It's very, very prolific in growing the suckers, the slips, the new stalks. And it's a baby corn. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And each stalk will grow 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 little ears of corn. Every growing node on that stalk produces an ear of corn. And it's just a little baby corn. If you let it grow, it becomes a popcorn. But if we could possibly cross it into something like this, that would be amazing. The productivity could be really awesome. And but we'll go from there, guys. I will make more updates next year. And we did get some seed at least, so it's not a 100% loss. We started with exactly 30 seeds, and I got more than 30 seeds back out of it, so that's not bad. And we'll see how the other varieties do. And I think we'll just plant them all at the same time in the ground and go from there, right? So stay tuned, follow along, guys, on our little trip here of growing nitrogen-fixing corn and selecting it out and growing it and hashing out how it does. But we'll see. Can't pass up such an opportunity to grow an amazing crop like this. And everybody loves corn, right? I love my tortillas. I love my popcorn. I love my sweet corn. So, yeah, it's definitely worth the trouble sometimes. Or maybe not. Who knows? But we'll give it a shot anyways. Go from there.